I'm gonna dive right into our first topic, and so I talked about this on my solo, and I want to apologize to the viewers and everything. I didn't make any videos this weekend. This is why. I've written 3 scripts in preparation to building my videos and putting some additional content out there. Mm-hmm. And I was pretty excited. I was going to make them Sunday night, shoot them up first thing this morning, and have them all ready to go. Then a bombshell hit.
Mm-hmm.
The bombshell is that the Power 5 conferences were having a conversation about canceling the season. When I looked at that, they basically took everything I writ out the window, in a way. So first you had the Ivy League that decided to go ahead and cancel all their sports. Since with them, they don't even give out athletic scholarships or academic scholarships. So for them, this is nothing. This is really not a loss for them. This doesn't really hurt them as much because their students are going to come regardless. Mm-hmm. So they went ahead and eliminated theirs, even though we don't get the Yale-Harvard annual game, which I've watched a few times. It's quite entertaining.
No.
But we don't get that. So they went ahead and started off with their cancellation. Mm-hmm. We follow up with that. You had UConn decide that financially it made more sense to cancel the season rather than play the season. Good, valid point. So they looked at their numbers and decided that was what it should be. And I looked at the group of 5 and thought that, you know what? This is probably going to be something that's going to happen more often. Sure enough, a day or so later, the Mid-American Conference, the MAC, canceled their entire season. So once those hit, I started to wonder about the implications behind not only them canceling their year, but what does it look like when come bowl season? So I'm like, okay, the Power 5 is going to really have to figure out something in order to make this season happen. We already had the We Are United stance from the United players discussing what they need in order to feel comfortable playing this year. Then the story started rolling in about the Power 5 Conference President's meeting. And then today, the Big Ten voted to cancel the football season. So Jimmy, now that the Big Ten has canceled, as it was confirmed that it was going to happen either today or tomorrow, and the Pac-12 is up, do you see the rest of the teams following suit?
Some of them yes, some of them no. Some of them yes, because this thus far is the biggest conference to cancel. So that really means something. The Big Ten carries a lot of weight amongst the Power 5. So that will influence maybe, to me, 1 to 2 of the other conferences to cancel their team seasons outright. But I still think you'll have 1 or 2 sort of maverick conferences who will want to try to figure out a way to at least make an attempt to have a season during this pandemic, because you look into the wide world of sports, and I know that college is in a different circumstance dealing with student athletes as opposed to professionals, but you see it working, or at least you see the attempt in other sports being made. So I think they look at that. And, despite looking at what's happened in college football with some of the cancellations that have already happened, some of them are going to at least try to make an attempt. They're going to try to outdo and outsmart, and in a sense kind of make look bad some of the other conferences who have chosen to not even make an attempt, but to just take their ball and go home.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that. I was reading some fans were kind of talking about how Ohio State, in a way, basically carries the Big Ten and how they should leave and go to another conference. Because right now the discussions are the Big Ten, Pac-12 canceling. The SEC is trying to salvage the year while the Big 12 and the ACC are in limbo. They're trying to figure out what their next move is going to be, which, to be honest, I believe if you look at it, the ACC is more likely to cancel than the other two. I think the Big 12 and the SEC will most likely stick around, only because they're in the South. That's where football is basically lived and breathed. And so by them being in their location, it makes more sense for them to find a way to make this work, whereas your northern teams and your western teams are similar to their governments, decided that they can't figure out a way to do this safely. And so I get what the schools are trying to do. I also see this as an indictment on what the schools are trying to do, on themselves for what they're trying to do, which there's a lot more nuance to them playing and not playing. It's what I think that's what's bothered me on the interwebs and listening to people talking about it, is they're not looking at the entire circumstance. Most people are mad saying that the players should have a voice. They should be able to voice their opinion, and they feel like they should be able to play because they want to play. If you listen or read what the players are actually saying, yes, they want to play. but not just for the sake of playing. They need assurances, protocols, something in their safeguards to protect them and make them feel safe. They want to feel safe. No different, like I mentioned on my solo, no different than you are in a relationship. Studies have shown that women feel happiest in a relationship when they feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it's the same thing with men in a relationship. If we feel safe to be able to express ourselves, safe to be able to talk about certain things, we feel more comfortable being in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with your job. If you feel like your job is safe, you're going to do your best work. This is where the players are. They want to feel safe, and a lot of people aren't recognizing that there's way more to this than just getting on the field and not getting on.
So the hashtag has been "We want to play." Hashtag "We want to play." Right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that sound eerily familiar to what the NFL players were saying 2 or 3 weeks ago for the exact same reasons?
Exactly.
And the criticism back then would essentially be what it is now, which is, if you've had months to figure this out, why has this aspect not been figured out?
Why hasn't it been addressed at all? Right.
I've not been able to come up with a clear, precise answer as to why this hasn't been figured out. If you knew you were going to confront these issues come August or September, then why do these student athletes, these college football players, have to bring this up to you? And in a sense, I guess the offshoot of that is to me, for the first time, they've united in a much deeper way, I think. And I think that this will continue because there's still going to be issues to work out beyond the pandemic, such as being paid to play in some sense that works for everybody. So I like it for that reason. But the players, just like the NFL players, should not have had to say hashtag "We want to play." This is the list of demands that we need in order to feel safe playing. So I don't understand why the NCAA would let it get to that point. How have they not figured this out? And I guess part of it is the conferences a lot of times act independently.
No, not a lot of times. They act.
Okay, so they are independent.
They act independently.
So the overarching NCAA structure, that's just nominally. That's just in name only. The conferences decide and run things for themselves.
It's kind of like Roger Goodell to the NFL.
Yeah.
It's a commissioner type. The NCAA itself, the brand, the name itself, is kind of like a commissioner over everybody. Each conference acts independently in their TV deals and all the stuff they do, but the overarching has some say when it comes to the national aspect. They're the ones that plan out the national games and all of that stuff, whereas locally each conference does their own thing. Hence why Missouri left the Big 12, and so did Nebraska went up to the Big 10 because they wanted more money because the Big 10 network makes more, and so does the SEC network. And so you're right. They had this time. Why haven't they figured this out? I have to give props to one conference, though. Feels really weird. Got to give props to the SEC.
Okay.
This is why. So Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, mentioned this is one of his tweets, is the best advice I've received since COVID-19 is be patient, take time when making decisions. This is all new and you'll gain better information each day. That's the one thing I can give props to the SEC. They have been the slowest and the most diligent in everything they've done. They pushed back the start of practice and training. They pushed back their season to the end of September. They wanted to give themselves time to see what new information may arise that could lead to them still playing their season. Everybody else is pushing to start end of August. They said, we're not starting the end of September because of that. So they're taking the proper approach to make sure that there's no I told you so situations in there where they can either pull out or push in sooner based upon, like I said, the newer information they receive. So they're trying to put together the safety protocols. But here's the issue. And this is the problem the players are having. In reading, Bomani Jones had an article in The Undefeated where he talked to players in the Pac-12 during the We United piece. And he's got quotes and everything from them, which is a phenomenal read because it gives you a little bit more insight of what they're thinking. The players don't want to sign a waiver. They don't want to take all the liability of playing. They want the schools to take responsibility. And that's where your problem is running into.
So you mean like in the sense of if while I'm playing for you for this season, I contract COVID-19, the medical expenses that they would no doubt incur would be covered by the NCAA or by their schools or their conferences as opposed to being on themselves.
Exactly. Okay. And here you go. Here's one right here. I saw there's a player at Houston, University of Houston, has a heart condition now because he caught COVID-19.
Right.
Because he caught it, his future's in the air. That is the reason why these players are fearful, are terrified. If they get sick, This could be their NFL career.
So then are we talking less about medical coverage and more about sort of insurance in the sense of if this happens to me and it threatens or I guess in a sense destroys what could have been a successful NFL career, what type of financial compensation can I get or do I deserve?
It's both. It's both. It's more so not even just the financial compensation. It's the fact that if they get sick, then what? Like Cedric Williams, that's his name, defensive lineman for Houston. He says, I really don't know the outcome or what's in store for me in the future because he's gotten it now. He has heart complications. Could he have had a pre-existing condition? Maybe. But guess what? He could have still played football with that pre-existing condition, obviously, because he's been playing this entire time. This magnify those things, and that's what the players are terrified of. And if we can't, as fans, understand why they're cautious, yes, they can go out and play. The morality rate is really, really low. That's cool. But these conditions like this are popping up a lot. We have no clue what the outcome is in that portion.
So then if no conference is willing to address that, how can any of the players play? Because the SEC, if the SEC has a plan and they want to move forward and they want to play, if they don't address this, how can the SEC players get out there and play?
They can't. That's the thing, is that we're being gaslit by all the people that felt the need to jump on board with, oh, we got to let the players, we got to let their voice matter. If they want to play, we should let them play. They've also said they want to be paid, but you all say at the same time, they shouldn't be paid. They're getting a scholarship. We don't need to listen to the players. The adults need to be talking. Which one is it? We need to pick a side. To me, I'm listening to both of them, but at the same time, their We Want to Play campaign hinges on certain protocols and safeguards being put in. And here's my last piece with this. The problem you run into with this, and one of the players mentioned, if some of these guys go home, it's not as safe, or they're going back to bad environments, or they're in a better situation, or even more safe, potentially catching COVID playing football than they are going home. I am with them on that part. Your problem is that you can't trust any of them. You can't trust these kids. You can't. They're going to have a party.
Yep.
They're going to all be hanging out in somebody's apartment playing video games.
Yep.
They're going to have a whole bunch of girls in and out.
Yep.
That's the stuff that college kids do.
Yeah, and right. So they're not forced to change their lifestyle. So they're not going to change their lifestyle. Because like if it was up to the NBA players, if there was no bubble and there was on them and their responsibility to protect themselves at home, I mean, Sweet Lou, he'd be in Magic City every single night.
Hey, look at Major League Baseball. Look at MLS. They both have run into issues where they've had double-digit staff members and players getting sick and testing positive. They've had games canceled and postponed.
Yeah.
That's the problem. They got money. They can sit at the house and figure out life. They can shuttle in a few women's in here if they need to. But they have the capabilities of living their life even if they did get sick. And they can't follow protocol. So inherently as humans.
So then do you think the exact same thing would happen to a college football team? Like, let's say the SEC does decide to play, figure out a way to play, and they get on the field, and one player for Auburn, let's say it's 3 players, test positive for COVID-19.
Right.
Of a group of players for that team. I mean, how many players are on a college football team?
85 to 100.
Okay.
And
so
that includes like walk-ons and all of that stuff.
Right.
So you're probably, I'll say about 100
So you're still able to play. I know you have to test all the other players to make sure no one else has it, but are they still able to play? Or like baseball, do they then have to shut things down?
Well, it depends. If one player's got it, there's a chance that 30 do. They'd have to test every single one of them, get the results back before they travel. And if you are about to travel, for example, Alabama's about to go up to Tennessee and play a game. They find out three or four guys, including their starting quarterback, has tested positive for COVID. Do you think they want to play that game against Tennessee? I wouldn't want to play that game against Tennessee. If OU's traveling to Oklahoma State, hell, just up the highway to Stillwater, and we find out Spencer Rattler's tested positive, do you think OU wants to play that game?
No.
I mean, it goes down the list. Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, any of your big-name players, if they end up getting sick, which they're typically the more responsible ones, but if they end up testing positive, do you think those teams want to play those games? They don't. You just put yourself at a disadvantage. I'm sorry. Inherently, as human beings, we do not know how to follow rules or protocols. Just ask Adam and Eve. That's your starting point. That was the beginning. And guess what they couldn't do? Follow God's command.
So to that point, lastly, the NFL has to be watching this very closely.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's the closest thing to NFL football in a sense is college football. So are they going to go based off of what happens with college football, or does the NFL have their own plan, and regardless of what the NCAA and those divisions decide to do, the NFL is going to move ahead with their plan regardless?
I'm going to defend the NFL in this case. I think the NFL actually has a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Just little things with the PA they didn't address that they were supposed to. They didn't get done. But I think they actually may have a legitimate plan. The only thing good about football, which I think this is actually good, we can segue into another segment with this because this is a good discussion. The one thing the NFL has to figure out is how to get the teams in and out. You can't really have teams fly in the morning of, just because depending on the distance, jet lag, legs tightening up,
right.
It's kind of a unfair disadvantage for the traveling team.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that comes with the nature of being a road team, but they usually get to at least sleep a night. So you fly them in the night before, then you put them out there on the field.
Mm-hmm.
That may work. And then as soon as the game's over, you shower, you fly the hell back out. That can work. They have a little bit, for them, it's easier to bubble them in their at homes and tell them, look, you guys got to follow protocol. You have to.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a little bit easier for them than college, because in college, unfortunately, you have, depending on, most of these are public universities, you have another 40,000 students you got to account for.
Mm-hmm. That,
unfortunately, these 100 players can't be separated from or siloed from, because it's college life. It takes away from amateurism, because if you think about it, they're supposed to be students first, right? Now
right.
We're making them just athletes.